I guess you could call me the steward of a community in Oakland, Sacred Garden community. Let's see, how shall I do this? I had a life-changing experience with LSD when I was 17, and I was fortunate to be able to go to my father and describe it to him. I had seen some books by Charles Tart and John Lilly and Carlos Castanet in his library, so I felt safe talking to him. And he said, let's get this right, and I embarked on a lifetime of study, having traveled to places like Brazil, Sierra Mazateca, and Mexico, Guatemala, and elsewhere. Really fortunate to journey with some of my family members, my father and my older brother, and then with folks over the years like Terrence McKenna and Alexander and Ann Shulgin and Jonathan Ott and that crew. So just to give you the background there. Studied a lot of psychology and religious studies, kind of following that path, and then actually have engaged a lifetime of molecular biology.
I'm sorry to interrupt for 1 second. It's cutting out a little bit on this end, and people are finding it a bit hard to understand. Do you have a microphone or anything that can connect to the computer?
How about now? Is it better? No.
And how is that for everyone?
Is it better?
That's good.
Yeah, just talk slowly. If you talk slowly, it should be fine.
Okay. I just turned my volume down on my side.
That's better, yeah.
Okay. Just giving a kind of a long bio. Essentially to say, have been working with plants for the last 35 years, have a lovely sacred plant garden. I'm tempted to tour with you guys, and have been working with various underground communities and above ground educational communities like San Francisco Psychedelic Society in Erie. That's my own little background. Just to segue into really, I think what the more interesting part of the question is, how did the DNO get started? I was meeting with a group of folks who were members of Sacred Garden community, and also with an integration group called ERIE, Entheogen Research Integration Education. And we were meeting at a new location called Haven because there's been so much interest in the Bay Area in sacred plant practice. We're really finding a need to scale our ability to support different kinds of practice. So I was looking for a expansion home for Sacred Garden community, essentially. So it was really coming from a feeling of what do we as a community need to engage healthy sacred plant practice and start to scale that up in a safe way. That was sort of the motivation for our meeting. And we were all just kind of sitting together and riffing and just chatting before we really got into the meeting, and someone said, hey, have you heard what's happening in Denver? And we were all like, yeah, Denver. And someone said, well, we should do this in Oakland. And it just felt right, and we said, yeah, let's do it. And then one of the guys said, well, you know, I've been working a little bit with city council. I think we can do this the sort of democratic way by going to our own legislators and getting them to do this here in Oakland. So we said yes, and because I was just sitting there listening, I guess they said, well, I'll be the chair of the steering committee, so I got to be the chair of the steering committee. And I think something that's important now, this may sound kind of hippie, but we're sincere about this. We got together to meet when we were founding this group, and we said, we're going to come in behind the plants. We want to represent the message that we get from our practices with sacred materials, and we're going to come in with love and respect and openness to learning with our conversations with City Council and Oakland Police Department, and see them as friends rather than as adversaries, and I think that really helped too.
Fantastic. So tell us a little bit more about the Sacred Garden Project.
Right. So that's, I think, a rich aspect of the Bay Area more broadly. There's just been a lot of healthy, I'll call it practice, in the Bay Area with a lot of, people might say circles, some people will talk about churches, different kinds of facilitation happening in the Bay Area. And Sacred Garden community has essentially come out of some work that I've been doing facilitating for the last 20 years, I guess, in Oakland. And we have our own little practice community. And there's been so much growth and interest over the last 4 or 5 years. I've had to change my own practice. We used to have open gardens every Sunday, and people will come here to the garden and look at plants. We talk about plants. It's kind of a family-friendly thing, right? Really, the integration would happen there. And it started to get to be that where there were 20, 40, 60, 100, 120 people every Sunday coming into my house, right, essentially, which is a fun place, but it's a house. And so we're looking at scaling up now. So we're actually, that was all part of this, I think, really. Now, because of the decriminalization, it's opened up an opportunity for a lot more education and that sort of thing. So Sacred Garden communities, you could say a group of friends get together, working with plants. There are about 250 of us, I think, in that community. But,
So what was the rationale for going, as opposed to following Denver's lead on decriminalizing psilocybin, and for you guys to go for all plants? It seems bold, to say the least.
yeah, thanks for asking that. And, a lot of what we're trying to do is really listen to our community, like here, right? Like, what do we need? What are we doing? What are we practicing? What do we need? We talk a lot about listening to even during our own practice, right? So that's kind of part of our fractal practice. There's a lot of work that's happening in the Bay Area with all of these plants, of course, right? So there are ayahuasca journeyers, there are humaros, right, working with the cactus. They're all our friends, right? They do these practices. We're trying to support a diverse practice, so there are people in their 70s and 80s, who come to circles, right? And someone at that age might have a health risk, and we want to be able to call Oakland. We want to be able to call 911 without being afraid, right? So, if you're working with cactus, if you're working with ayahuasca, if you're working with mushrooms, to us that doesn't matter. It's a healing practice, and we need to be able to be open with other elders in our community, like police department, right? I'll tell you, I really wanted to have the Shulgin compounds also included because I love a lot of those compounds, but there was pushback there.
Okay, I think the
go ahead.
The trope itself of decriminalize nature is very, very powerful. It points to the very fact that criminalizing nature is absurd. So did you guys have to present a list of plants, psychoactive plants that would be decriminalized, or is it broader than that? So, for example, if a new psychoactive plant was discovered, would it fall inside this legislation?
Yeah, that's actually a super rich conversation because, and the conversation about nature is a really rich one too, but we'll set that one. But it's actually the real big change that actually happened in Oakland was less the specific plants and more our right to work with those plants, to use those plants to extract them, to create teas or even powder types of extracts, right? Could be DMT, for example, that you extract from mimosa. So most of the plants actually that were covered in the resolution were already legal to grow, like San Pedro cactus and the plants there are many plants that would make different forms of what you could call ayahuasca. You could grow all of those, right?
That's
of course, mushroom and peyote and iboga were specific plants that were made legal. Right, so those plants, not legal, I'm sorry, that were decriminalized for lowest priority. So a few specific plants were decriminalized to access and work with, but most of the plants were already available, and it was just our ability to work with those plants, to extract them and drink them and use them that was made legal. Yeah.
Okay, I think one of the important things for us in Australia to understand is the sort of distinction between county law, state law, and federal law in the United States. Like we see cities decriminalizing plants, whereas I don't think that could happen here because of our structure of government. So how does that work, the different levels of ordinance, let's say?
Yeah, and I think it's kind of nice. And in fact, that's something that we're hopeful about with our movement, because a lot of what Decriminalize Nature is really trying to do is help ourselves heal, right? So part of this has been how can we think about other leadership and how can we think about our own like elected leadership and work with them, right? It's really likely that we could go to our city and have this conversation. That's really nice that we could go to our governing body and have that conversation, meet with city council and talk with them. And then we have that level of distinction between the city and the county and the state, which are the main categories you just mentioned. And it's interesting because part of the city resolution, one of the resolved was that the city would request, I can even read it, that we were going to call upon the county to cease prosecution of persons involved in the use of entheogenic plants or plant-based compounds, right? So the city is specifically asking, we're asking the county, we're saying, hey, don't do this either, right? But they could still do it. So officially, nobody should come into Oakland and start setting up an iboga clinic in the corner because the state, at the very least, could come in and shut it down.
Right. So did you meet against much sort of push-up, or was it a fairly easy process?
It was actually strangely easy, I'll say. But it was a really weird feeling because it was like everything was ready. Everything was just ready. So as soon as we decided that we were going to try, it's like all of the work was laid out in front of us, if that makes any sense. We just had to go meet city council. We had to get support from the community so that when we spoke to the city council, we would have that support, right? We immediately were getting perfect feedback from city council. It was just beautiful. You know, some were saying, oh, my grandmother was a curandera. She worked with entheogens, right? That didn't hurt. But let us support your resolution, right? That guy, Noah Gallo, sponsored the resolution, right? We had to write the resolution. That was really fun. If you hear me talking, you probably get a sense of the detail. I really wanted to make sure that we made sure that the plants were not constrained, so it's an open list of plants. What we got really clear about the compounds, that they're tryptamines, methylamines, indolamines, the plants bearing those compounds, right? So writing the resolution was, I'll say, a lot of fun. Immediately when people heard, they started coming out of the woodwork. So we got MAPS attorneys reviewing, MAPS, multidisciplinary stuff. Yeah. So MAPS we had a lot of people who wanted to go through the resolution for us to help us get it right. Yeah. And then the council was perfect because they're like, okay, yeah, passing the resolution is just the start. You have to tell us what it's going to look like. You need to go do your homework or we won't pass, right? So how's it going to look? How's it going to roll out? What is it going to be? Kids tripping on the schoolyard or what? Right. So we really got into a mature relationship. I was surprised one day when I went to meet city council and half the Oakland Police Department was there. That was interesting. The police chief, the chemist, the director of drug policy, the mental health expert. So we had to meet them. It turned out several times. It looked like, right. So we had to do all that work, you could say, but it was like joyful work. It was just so lovely to be able to. I'm kind of traumatized by police. I was arrested with shamanic materials back in the day, but it was really useful to be able to meet with. I like to consider these people to be elders now, in our community, right? And help them understand what we're doing and get the open respect going. But that was where a lot of the work happened. Then when it came to the resolution, there were so many people that came out to support it. It was a unanimous vote. There was a little behind the scenes negotiations at the last minute to get different language in and out of the resolution, but that's about it.
Okay, so when the vote took place, what were the numbers for and against?
I'm sorry. Oh yeah, we're talking about voting, city council voting?
Yeah, what were the numbers in the end?
It was a unanimous yes.
100%.
Well, now this is where there was. You can decide what you want to decide. Two of the city council chose not to attend that particular session. Yeah. So 6 of 8 were present, and the 6 present voted yay. The other 2 didn't vote.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
gives us all hope, I think. So how long did that whole process take?
That was also amazing. The whole thing took about 5.5 months.
Wow.
Went pretty quickly. Yeah. And it cost about, I can share this, it cost us about $15,000. We had a couple of big events. We did a lot of curriculum building, education that City Council wanted to see. Probably 35,000 if we count in volunteer time, you know what I mean. But it was about 5 months. Everyone should do it.
Yeah, we would love to hear. We would love to. I think you mentioned a little bit earlier, do you expect to see a sort of rise of Santo Daime churches locating to Oakland and, as you mentioned, Iboga clinics opening up because of the sort of safe haven that Oakland provides?
Yeah, that's really interesting. So there was an addition that we were happy with to the resolution, which was no commercial sales. Part of the actual resolutions specifically saying we're not decriminalizing commercial sales, right? But that's in there.
So someone could still get arrested for selling LSD. So someone still could get arrested for selling LSD in Oakland. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. That's right. Or selling mushrooms. Yeah, or anything else. So that kind of puts a slow roll on it. We're investigating collective models. Actually, there are a lot of people who have already been doing practice for a long time. They're looking at church models, also thinking about federal, right? So we're looking at things like there's an ecumenical group now of different people who've been doing circles, running what they consider to be sacred practices, meeting to talk about shared values and ethics, so that when we go to IRS, we'll be able to say, look, this is just someone wants to sell drugs. This is a real safe practice. There are 20 different churches. That's one thing that's happening, right? Yeah. But then we're also looking at collective models, we're doing a lot of meeting now with other community leadership, like cannabis industry leadership, and also through City Council, getting a chance to meet other folks like church leadership. So what we're trying to do right now, and this is sort of built into the resolution, which we think is really lovely, is we were trying to do a lot of community learning and education. So we want to learn who's already doing practice in the community that we didn't know. We're not just going out to tell everybody how to do things. We're going to learn what's happening, and then also bring in education on safe practice and different ways people may engage the what I call sacraments, or the mushrooms or materials. Kind of along the lines I heard you in the beginning. There's individual use that can be safe. There's one-on-one use or therapeutic use. There's group practice. We're trying to do a lot of education over the next year or two. If people are going to start coming in and selling things, we can't control that, so we're going to see what happens.
Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, we might go to some audience questions now. Okay, so Dean's just going to relay some audience questions.
Can you hear me at the back? All right, so just a reminder, everyone, because I haven't had much on the email so far. If you have a question during the talk, email it to info@psychedelicsociety.org.au. This is for all the talks today. We're going to minimise the amount of noise that comes from people coming to tell their story, and going to filter the questions through the email. So if you have any questions at all, email them to info@psychedelicsociety.org.au, and we'll ask them to the speakers at the end. And if we get time, we may open it up to the audience at the end of each speaker. So I just have one question. Can you hear me, Bob? Yeah, otherwise...
I don't think you can, so come over here.
All right, so I'll say it into this, and then maybe Jeff can relay it. So the question is, we saw that there was a movement towards decriminalizing psilocybin across the state of California. Have you been working alongside that campaign, or can you speak to anything that's happening with that movement or what's going on in that area?
Okay, Bob, so there's awareness of a movement to decriminalize cannabis psilocybin.
I got it.
Across California. What do you guys have to do with that, and what's that all about?
Yeah. Yeah, so we've been meeting with those folks, the Decriminalize Nature California folks. In fact, they got the Decriminalize Nature term from our group, which we're very happy to have shared. And in fact, actually, if anyone is interested in kind of trying to see what you might do locally, there's a decriminalizenature.org website, which is really trying to make all of the, it's not intellectual property, but whatever you want to call it, the information that we pulled together available in an open source framework, right? So things like logos and all the research behind it. You mentioned the science. We really brought together a lot of science in articles that are available, right? So go to the Decriminalize Nature. So we're working with these guys at that level, right? Helping them with their conception. We had a lot of talk about the psilocybin only versus all entheogens. And in fact, actually, you can imagine there were a lot of other groups that really, everyone loves you, everyone hates you. So everyone's really happy with what we're doing, but there are groups that are really angry because we should have gone for all drugs, heroin, cocaine, and everything. And then there are others who are worried because they think that it's going too far too fast with all these different ibogaine things, right? So it's like, what's the sweet spot? What do you think we're in the sweet spot? But so, we really want to encourage the psilocybin guys to go for all the rest of the entheogens. Yeah, that, but it's all open conversation, right? And so we like what they're doing. The initiative process is very different. They're doing an initiative process for psilocybin only. But we're all moving in the same direction. Yep.
That would be state legislation too, so I imagine a rather more complex process.
That'd be state level, right? And so one of the things that we're really doing right now, and we just had a meeting here today and we're talking a lot about it, we want to be supportive of every other movement unless there's something specific in that movement that is destroying something we want to be doing. So if they want to have DEA-regulated psilocybin from a laboratory, that's fine with us, as long as they don't say that we can't grow mushrooms, right? So we're all in favor of their initiative, but as long as the specific language doesn't say, and growing mushrooms at home is bad, right?
Okay, next question, Bob. What's your view on the sustainability of growing entheogens? I'm going to get this name incorrect, but let's give it a go. Basisteropsis, Acacia trichoceros, in Oakland and Bay Area. How can these plant materials be grown on a larger scale?
Okay, so...
Yeah. I heard it. I got it. Yeah, that's a lovely question. In fact, I'm going to be at a Psychedelics Liberty conference. You see these beautiful
cacti.
What else can I show you while we're out here? So this is one of my areas that I really love. I talk all about ethical and sustainable sourcing.
Right.
Here is this is Phalaris grass, which is also very interesting if you do some really nice extraction.
We're losing your connection, Bob. Okay, you're back. Maybe your Wi-Fi...
Hey, Bob, you're going to have to come back in.
Lovely garden, but I think the connection's better inside. Different kind of connection.
Not his connection to nature. Let's give it a minute.
It's something that's very important, and we're really looking at analogs, and we're talking with cannabis community about analytics for purity and also for clean extraction methods, all that kind of stuff.
Okay,
Fantastic.
Probably time for one more question, Bob. How did you push back against arguments that these drugs could harm people such as vulnerable groups like children?
Can you repeat that question?
How did you push back against arguments that these drugs could harm people, particularly vulnerable groups like children?
Right. Yeah, that's a really lovely question. And in a way, I'll say we didn't exactly try to push back, really, but we did try to understand the landscape really openly and transparently. And so we would talk about some things like these compounds work on serotonin receptors, which is quite different from the dopamine receptor-based compounds. These tend not to be compulsive redosing, right? So we would have that kind of conversation. with city council, like, let's go into the molecular biology and talk about addiction and, compulsive redosing, and these plants are quite different. You build a tolerance. You can't really even use them like that. So we would have those discussions. And we talked a lot about safe practice and how having something made illegal makes it very difficult for us to be open about education and safe practice. We would talk that way. And then we had a lovely, lovely, beautiful, just long, infinite line of community who came and spoke to city council about their healing experience.
Right.
And that was huge.
It's
right?
powerful.
When you have
stories are powerful.
When you have 100 people pass through and talk about their whole addiction that was helped, and now that they can be with their family again, I mean, that was the end of it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, it sounds like. Do we have any more questions?
We've got one more question here.
One more question, Bob.
Time for one more. So just to clarify exactly what has happened with the Oakland resolution, is it legal to use and possess mushrooms, for example, or just being arrested for them no longer carries a criminal charge?
Right, yeah. So, yes. So it is a decriminalization initiative. It's not only for mushrooms. I'll read a tiny bit of the resolution. So we had a number of resolutions, but this one kind of gets it. This is a pretty clear one. The investigation and arrest for planting, cultivating, purchasing, transporting, distributing, engages with practices with extracting or possessing these plants or the similar plant compounds. So in other words, even if you get the 5-MeO-DMT on the internet, if it's a plant compound, it's okay, right? The 5-MeO-DMT comes from a lot of plants. Just as an example, these are the lowest law enforcement priority for the city of Oakland.
Wow. Fantastic. Well, it very much sounds like you had the right group of people gathered at the right time and the right cultural momentum. And thank you so much for the work you've done. So we'll show you the audience. So this is one of our biggest events we've had now. We have over 350 people here today. Can you see that, Bob?
Let's make some noise.
Yeah, make some noise for Bob.